and welcome to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our New York City studio apartment is my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
And a very special guest. Occasionally, we like to bring people on that are deep thinkers to join us in our conversations, and today we have Lindsey Eryn Clark on the podcast.
Hey.
And Lindsey is a podcaster herself, hosts a podcast called... Crap, just forgot it.
It's called the
Daring Romantics. I had it. I wanted to say it at the same time to make sure I did know what it was. I just got all caught up in my words. So Daring Romantics, what was your podcast about? Sell it.
Sell it. Well, it is less about the how-to of business because I think you can Google a lot of things or buy an e-course. And it's more about the heart of business because I think sometimes we fail to talk about like the leadership and like the integrity and the character that goes into having your own business. So that's what it's about. You guys should listen. It's real good.
I have a strong me bias.
I mean, I'm real partial.
Before we jump in, well, this show is going to be about faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is something we all three have experience in, and I think we're all three passionate about the topic in general.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. Before we jump into that, though, I just want to let you know that this podcast is sponsored by Audible. And Audible is a place where you can get thousands of audiobooks, and you can continue this learning journey after this podcast. I have been reading the most recent book by Francis Chan, Letters to the Church, and it's all about his journey from being what most people would consider a mega pastor and author, celebrity pastor, and him saying, I don't think God called me to be a celebrity, he called me to be a disciple maker. And so he left it all behind and went on a journey of figuring out, what does the Bible actually say about being this thing that we call pastors? And it's so interesting.
Yeah.
If you would like to get a free audiobook and maybe check out Francis Chan's new book, you can go to audible.deeplycurious.fm. And just by downloading a free book of your choice, it helps out this show. And then you can cancel your membership. I don't care if you cancel it because I already get paid. That is audible.deeplycurious.fm.
Yes.
So, fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it.
I wanted to talk about this subject specifically with you because I think maybe a couple months ago you posted that you, in college, you weren't a designer, you weren't a writer, but you really wanted to be.
Yeah.
And now you are a designer and a writer. And I think it's a really fascinating conversation to talk about how to get from like what you wish you were to
where you are.
To where you are. And I think you have a lot of insight.
Yeah. Man, guys, I was the most terrible creative there ever was. Is that a thing? I wanted to be so creative when I was in college, and I had so many creative friends, and I think that I was just like, I'm gonna be this. I'm gonna be creative in some way, shape, or form. And so I started with painting, and I was a terrible painter. It was so bad. I have so many paintings that are still in my friends' rooms, and I'm like, why do you have that up there? But I actually learned graphic design because somebody flaked out on making a poster for me while I was in college. And it was a 1 hour graphic design session at a Starbucks at 71st and Lewis in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And from there, I just knew a ton of graphic designers, and it was always they were amazing. Some of our friends are just incredible designers, and it's thinking about who they are compared to you are, and you didn't have any skill sets, and nobody ever really taught you except over a cup of coffee. It's really intimidating to call yourself a designer and to want to step into that when they're so good. It's why would you ever be a graphic designer when you have Dodge Pangburn as your friend and he's amazing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that it was really intimidating for me to want to call myself a graphic designer because I had so many friends Dodge and Krista and all these different people in my life who were so fantastic. And yeah, it just really kept me from calling myself a designer. I would always say, oh, I do graphic design on this side. And even with writing, I never called myself a writer because I felt oh, I haven't published anything. I just write on a blog, and I had started this document on my computer called Rabbit Trails, which kind of was just my little exercise. I'd start writing a topic, and then I'd close my computer, and the next day I'd start writing again, where I ended. And it was kind of my way of training myself to write a book one day. But like, because I had never published anything and because I wasn't as good as all these other people, I kind of felt like I'm not these things. You know, like I'm not a graphic designer, I'm not a writer because I'm not good enough, you know? And I specifically remember one day I had moved back home to San Diego and I was at an event and somebody asked me what I did and I was like, oh, I'm a Jill of all trades. And kind of, I feel too, like as women, we almost like downplay what we do and we feel like we have to like apologize. You've probably never had to experience this in your life, Cody. But as women, this is like a thing that happens, is like we feel the need to downplay everything that we do and apologize for having these skill sets and then justify the fact that we're not doing them full time. And so I would always be like, oh, I'm a Jill of all trades. I do this, this, this. And I do graphic design on the side. And one time after the party, I just like really felt like convicted. Like, Lindsey, you do graphic design all the time and that's really the only place that you're making your money. Like you should start calling yourself a graphic designer. But like literally in my head, I just kept on thinking like, but all these other people who are so much better. And I also felt too, to call myself designer meant that I had to be, like if people had, like you had to meet people's expectation, right? Like people have this expectation of like what you should, like your level of expertise. And if you don't meet that, then you're like, I'm a fraud. And then you'd feel like all this imposter syndrome and stuff. And so I was like, the safe way to not feel that is just to say that I do it on the side because then nobody will expect me to be good. If I'm crappy, then they're just like, well, she just does it on this side, you know? And so after this event, I really felt the conviction of like, you need to start calling yourself a graphic designer. I was like, okay, the next time somebody asks what I do, I'm just gonna say, I do graphic design. I'm a graphic designer. So the next event that I went to, I actually introduced myself as a designer. And that was like so intimidating for me because it's intimidating saying that you do something, you know, and you do feel like the imposter because you're like, but I'm really not that good. And I remember saying that, like, I'm really not that great. Like, just because I still wanted to, like, I wanted their expectation level to be right here so that I could, like, blow them away maybe. And what I actually found out that was when I started calling myself a graphic designer, I actually gave myself the permission to be good, which I think is like a really powerful thing. Like I think that there is so much power in a name and taking ownership of a name. And so what happened was I started calling myself a graphic designer and I started acting and thinking and moving like a graphic designer. And I gave myself the permission to explore, to experiment, to be bad, to be messy, to ask questions. And ultimately, like I saw like my skill level like go from here to here. And it was just, if you're watching this podcast, you can see. If you're listening to this podcast, you can't see that I just literally raised my hand. But you get the idea. A to B. But yeah, so it was just like really cool. Like I think that yes, it's faking it till you make it, but it's also deciding like I'm gonna take on this title and like take on ownership of it.
I think that's actually really maybe a good like distinctive like difference in like faking it till you make it. Because so Cody and I have talked about this a lot about you always hear like the success stories are always like, oh, I maxed out my credit card to move where I wanted to move, but I don't suggest that you do that. Or I lied on my resume and told them I knew Photoshop when I didn't, but I don't suggest that you lie. You know, there's always this unkosher thing that like, you know, somebody did in order to like be successful. But then they always like kind of preface it by like, I don't necessarily think that this is it. Yeah. And I was just thinking about like how I almost kind of feel like it's necessary, right? And it's not necessary to max out your credit cards. I'm not saying that, but I do think like there's this like, you literally have to put everything on the line. You give yourself no option
of backing
out and no option of failure because you have nothing else.
Right.
Like, and I think that's like a really good maybe like indicator is that it's not necessarily faking it till you make it. It's giving yourself the like freedom to say like, no, this is who I am, or this
and
is what I do.
it's also like taking away the safety net, where it's like, I think that sometimes like we cheat ourselves out of experiencing all of life because we're still living with a safety net. But it's like when you remove that safety net and say, nope, this is what I am, this is what I'm doing, it's like, well, it's sink or swim, because
this is what you're doing.
This is what you're doing. And so then you get like, you almost like force yourself to become good at it, or you force yourself to like take that next step and take that next risk.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when you were saying the like, oh, but I only do it on the side, or like the imposter syndrome, the whole time I was thinking like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I do. Because I don't tell people that I'm a writer. I say like, oh, like we make videos, we're podcasters, you know, whatever. Also, I write a little bit. Like, that's really exactly how I...
It's like you're more confident in saying the things that I do that you're attached to than saying the thing that you are really good at.
Yeah,
you're like,
for sure.
Oh yeah, we're YouTubers and we're podcasters, and I mean I write as well. Versus leading with, I am a writer and I do YouTube and podcasting with my husband.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is... that's just funny.
So what would happen? What would happen if you like switched and like you started saying that you were a writer first?
I honestly don't know. But I know for a fact that I do it because I'm scared that like, you know, maybe my writing isn't like what I want it to be, or maybe they're not going to think that it's what I want it to be, etc.
I totally resonate with that because literally that was my entire experience.
Yeah, that's for sure what I do.
What's funny is I was always the exact opposite. Like
You're 8, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Enneagram 8 is what that refers to. And I was always very confident in what I could do and who I was. And I was a photographer, or I was a videographer, or I was a designer. And I was blinded to the fact that I sucked. Like I was like, overconfident, way overconfident in my skills. But it kind of plays into what you're saying, though, is that like I was able to find my career. I was hired full time my senior year of high school as a graphic designer.
That's amazing.
And I sucked, but I sold myself. You know, it's like I went into that space confident that I was a designer and I could do everything that could be done, and that everything else that anybody else could do was awful and mine was awesome. But it's like looking at it, I mean, I realized, part of that was the fact that I was fresh out of high school and that I was a boy and I was 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, which comes with just, you know, being arrogant and blinded by the fact that you don't know it all.
Yeah.
And so, you know, once I passed that era of my life and started looking back at stuff and realizing, oh, wait, you don't know it all, for one. And two, you are really bad. Like, look at that. Like, you know.
Isn't that the worst to like go back and be like, wow.
Which is good. You should, if you look, you should always look back at the stuff you've done and say, that's not great, because that means that your taste has evolved and hopefully your skills have evolved with it.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you go years and look back at your stuff and be like, wow, that's exactly what I would do today, you should probably actually reevaluate what you're doing today.
Totally.
Yeah.
But my question in this would be, is it ever, I don't know, like too early to say that you're a designer or that you're a photographer? Or, I mean, this is all in the creative space because I think we all, this is what we know. But you could apply this to anything. Like, when is it too early to call yourself a mechanic? When is it too early to call yourself a plumber? Like, in anything. Is there a point when it's too early to change your Instagram bio to social media influencer?
I mean, okay. In all honesty, yes. Right?
Yeah.
Like, if I have never picked up a camera before and I go to Best Buy and I pick up a camera.
A 5D Mark III.
A 5D Mark III.
Obviously. That's going to be your first camera.
My first camera. Don't even get a new lens. I just use the lens that it comes with. Should I call myself a photographer? No.
Right.
I'm a person with a camera.
Right.
That takes really great pictures. And until I learn the settings, until I learn how to play with all the manual settings, until I get some new lenses, until I like experiment a little bit, then like you can get to that point. But it's like, just because you like download Adobe Photoshop to your computer does not make you a designer.
Right.
You know, like,
Right.
go design some stuff first. Find out if you actually want to be that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think
Yeah.
for me, it was like, I did want to be a designer. And so, like, I had to get to the point where it was like, yes, I was experimented, I played, but I knew that I wanted to be the designer. And, like, same with you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're already done exploring. Like, you know that you want to be the writer.
Right.
You're done exploring as well. You know,
Mhm.
like, you know that you, like, want to be doing all these different things. And it's when you hit that point of, like, okay, I know that this is what I want to do. I know I want to continue going down this direction. I think that that's when you say, this is what I am.
Yeah, I totally agree. I definitely think you can say it too early. I mean, we know people, right? Like,
We are all thinking of very specific examples we know in our life, you know?
and it's true. Like, there's a little, because I think maybe, and this is maybe just like my personal opinion, but I think that no matter what you do, you should be like true and authentic. And it's very inauthentic to call yourself a designer if you've never created anything for anybody, right? Like, that's not fair and not cool to say you're a master of something if you haven't done the thing.
What do you mean I haven't created? I created the flyer for my youth group about the new Trunk or Treat.
Right.
I'm a designer.
Trunk or treat.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
think,
opened Word. There was some clip art involved. I'm a designer, Sarah.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. I do think that that's a little inauthentic.
Yeah.
And that's just like me, because I care about authenticity
Right.
way too much. But
I think my favorite metaphor for this conversation is, you know, people. I think it's so common, especially in the photography space,
Right.
to go by that 5D Mark II, Mark III, and now all of a sudden you are a photographer and you're handing out business cards and being like, I can do your wedding photos, and you're like, have you even taken a photo? Like,
do you know composition?
But because the equipment, it's like the equipment justifies the title, is what people
Totally.
believe. But you would never remodel your kitchen, get a brand new oven, a brand new mixer, and then start handing out business cards that you're a master chef, you're a master baker, and go
Right.
start applying in all these restaurants and be
Right.
like, I'm a chef, and like, okay, like, what are some of your recipes or whatever people ask for in cooking world? And you're like, well, I mean, I just bought a Smeg refrigerator. You're like, okay, but like, what have you made?
Yeah.
It's like nothing, because nobody compliments the cook's oven on how good the food is, but people compliment the photographer's camera on how good the photos are.
Right.
And so in turn, that makes people feel like, well, if I buy the right stuff, then I can call myself this
The
thing.
thing. Yeah, I think technology has, like, really made it easy for people to call things before they actually are the thing.
Yeah.
Like, even like with website design, right? Like, I know so many people who put website designer on their bio, and I'm like, then I get the DM. Oh man, is this bad to say?
No.
Then I get the DM and they're like, hey, how do I build a website? And I'm like, what? You literally have website designer in your bio, and then you're DMing me, asking me how to build a website and what my process is. You're not a website designer yet. And
Yeah.
that's okay to admit. Like, you don't have to be it just yet. Like, and I think the thing too is people don't want to learn under anybody else these days.
Yeah.
Like, they want to figure it out on their own, which is awesome. But I really believe that there's something unique and special about learning under somebody else and, like, being an apprentice of the skill that you want to learn. And I think that we've lost that because we're such a me culture and such a prideful culture, and, like, we want to say that we've done the thing. And
We're
it's like,
self-made.
we're self-made, but there is no shame in being an apprentice of a skill set first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, nobody is actually self-made.
Right.
Just that's not a thing.
Yeah.
And if
Kylie
you
Jenner.
and if you study successful people, they will all talk about the people they surrounded themselves with
Totally,
that helped them along their way. And then, you know, there's I cannot remember I can't even begin to remember which president it was or which person it was that had this quote, but they basically said, like, they don't have any of the answers, but they know who to call for any of the answers. Like, they
so
surrounded
good.
themselves with the people that they needed to access any information that they possibly could know,
Right.
which makes that person ultimately the smartest person to know.
Yeah.
Because they know how to find the answers
Right.
more so than, like, having them
Having the
themselves.
answer.
They're surrounding yourself with those learning, with those environments.
Yeah, that's really good.
I think for like faking it till you make it, learning things. I would say a piece of advice that I have is, if you're learning something, this isn't really about when to start calling yourself
Right.
a something, but is to copy and to mimic and
Yes.
to find things that you know, now right now in your taste level, you really love it. And you're like,
Mhm.
I love this thing. Take that thing and figure out how to recreate it exactly.
Yeah.
If it's a design, go in Photoshop, go in Illustrator, and try to make it almost like, try to figure out the process used to make that
Right.
thing and make it, see if you can get it anywhere close to what it is.
Right.
Same with a photo. You love the photo. Go out, put your camera in manual, and try to get that photo exactly how that photo is.
Writing a piece of music.
Right.
All of it.
And I'm saying this because I feel like I have seen so many examples of people who, like we said, they download Photoshop, they buy a camera, they are now a designer, they are a photographer, but they've never taken that, like what you're saying, that
Right.
exploration time. And I think there is so much value in taking that time to just play, to just
Yeah.
explore, and to not post anything.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing that now we definitely don't understand. Like I feel like our generation, our culture, it's very much like, why aren't you creating and posting it online? Like if you're not putting it out there, if you're not posting it, there's no point in making it at all, which is not true.
It's so not true.
It's so not
It's
true.
like the very first thing that you do, you probably shouldn't post it unless you're wanting to post your journey.
Right.
Like sharing your journey, that is a different conversation. But what I'm saying is, don't look at I can't think, a Shepherd Fairy painting.
Mm-hmm.
Go in and then you're trying to learn how to paint and you paint it. Don't go sharing that and be like, look at me, I'm a painter.
Right.
Like,
But here's the thing. I know so many people who are so incredibly talented who do not want to create because, or who have trouble creating because it's what's the point if you don't post?
right.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it's
I
like-
kind of feel that. I feel that a lot of times. Like, I kind of fall into the pattern of like, well, if I'm not going to post this on Instagram or my website or whatever, then why would I even sit down and write it? Like,
For the sake of creating.
yes,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. But I find myself falling into that, like,
pattern of thinking.
that pattern, because it's very much what our culture or society like pushes
Mhm.
is like, be in front of people more and more and more content and content and content. And it's just like, you have to, I think, I've actually thought about this a lot more recently because I've been noticing, like, you watch specifically with like musicians and bands, they literally go away from social media for months and months at a time. They're like, I'm leaving, I'm going to go write my album, I'll be back in a year, right? And they do. They leave and they go write music and they're just like focusing on their creativity, and then they come back and share it. And like, why aren't we doing that? Like, why is it just like, oh, you wrote something, so now you have to post it tonight? Or, you know, whatever it is. You made a video, so now you have to post it tomorrow. Like, why can't it be something you actually work on and perfect before you share it?
Because we have zero patience.
Zero.
And we need affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
You need validation. Yep, that's exactly it. We feel like we need people to tell us like, oh, this is good, so that we can keep making it, or that we feel justified in continuing.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think about like all of the old like painters like back in the day, like Picasso and like Da Vinci and like everyone who like ever created something good, like they created in like hidden spaces. Like people didn't see what they were creating like back in the day, like, and they became the greatest artists of all time because like they crafted their skill set and they didn't let the opinions of other people shape how they created. They just created what was authentic and true to them. And if we can get back to that space, I think that we'll be creating with more innovation. But we're limiting our innovation because we're constantly posting, constantly putting out there, constantly letting people's opinions shape how we go forth and create. Like I see it all the time. Like I'm in an Instagram pod with these girls and I love them to death, and I just see their creativity being like shaved away because they're letting the opinions of Instagram shape how they create.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, oh, this photo didn't get a lot of likes. This thing didn't get a lot of likes. So I'm going to change how I'm creating so that it gets more likes. It's a stupid algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're literally creating for an algorithm where we should be creating for our souls.
Mm-hmm.
And we should like be creating in secret, and then not in secret, but like in that hidden space.
I think we shouldn't be afraid to go to the hidden space.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I think we're afraid to walk away from the attention and the relevant aspect of social media. We're afraid to go into this space where nobody's going to notice us for a minute. You know?
Yeah.
That's what I think. And I think I definitely find myself being shaped by, like, I find myself, my writing kind of like lessened the more I'm on Instagram and Pinterest, like reading quotes and things like that. I find the way that I write much more critical. Like, I'm very critical of the words the more I'm on social media. And so,
which makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah. Because I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, they wrote these words together and it's beautiful. Why should I even?
It's too much comparison.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're self-editing and and comparing your process to somebody's published work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was never meant to happen that way.
I don't think so.
Social media is such a beautiful thing, but I think that it really hinders us from creating in the way that we were meant to create.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it makes me sad because it's like there's so much like goodness and greatness like inside of each of us, and it's never, like you were saying, like we're self-editing before we ever actually put it on paper or like produce it. And it's like we keep ourselves from like creating the good thing. I was talking to my friend, she's like trying to write a book right now, and she was like talking to me about the writing process and everything. And I was like, don't edit anything that you're writing. Just write it, get it all out there, and do the editing later. And I think that that's what we need to do as creators, is just like get it all out there, edit later. But like you can't get it all out there in public. Like you have to get it all out there in private. And then like, as we're saying, show the world the finished product, but not necessarily the process.
That actually reminds me that about this past week, we went to Oklahoma, and we were hanging out with our family, and my sister got married, and that day I was filming, because I was filming for vlogging and YouTubing and all that type of stuff. And so I kept thinking about like, what do I need to film for the video? And then at a certain point during the day, I was just thinking like, if this was 10 years ago, I wouldn't be thinking about this at all. I would just be filming because I would not be thinking about who is going to watch this.
Right.
I would just be filming because I am capturing this memory for me or my family to watch later. And so you just film stuff because you're hanging out with your family, you're hanging out with your friends, and you're just out there with your camcorder on your shoulder, just filming stuff, or with your Handycam, this Sony Handycam from 2001. And, and I was just thinking about, I've thought about this a lot because we used to do that all the time. I had boxes of mini DV tapes of just us at Christmas and and filming, going to the beach, like whatever it is, it's just filming because I wanted to. Right. And because I loved having those memories. Sarah and I have talked about this actually quite a bit because we used to do this before YouTube was a thing.
Right. We
would just take our mini DV camera, and I have boxes of mini DV tapes of just doing stuff. When I was a kid, skating, us hanging out, and just going to her grandparents' lake house and just making these videos just to make them and just to film stuff for memory. That's it.
For no purpose.
No purpose other than memories, because it energizes me to do that. And I love having the memories and the archives of the videos. It's like one of my favorite things. And so during the day, I just like got to the point where I was like, basically told myself to quit telling the story. Like, and just, even if I don't make a video out of today, because I even thought about that, like, maybe I won't even make this a video, but I just want to stop thinking about like, what story am I telling? I'm just going to start filming stuff because I'm just hanging out with my family. I haven't been to Oklahoma in a year and 3 months. I haven't seen my family in however long, because the business in New York, but I haven't seen them in forever. And instead of like thinking about, point A to point B to point C to point D, it's like, just enjoy the day and film it because I'm making this home movie that I get to enjoy.
And automatically there's a story there.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that just makes me think like we put so much pressure on ourselves to like create this story, to create this narrative, to create something for this unknown audience that we can't see and feel, instead of just creating to capture, or to creating because it makes us feel alive, or creating because that's what we enjoy. And it's like, if we just create it out of the enjoyment, then it would serve a purpose at the end of the day. Because if we enjoy it, somebody else will enjoy it. And it's like when you're filming just like your family and just like having fun, like there's automatically just like a story unfolding that sometimes we miss like the organic story because we're trying to curate another story.
Well, and it's so true, because I mean, when we came back from Oklahoma, my thought was, we didn't even film an Oklahoma vlog. We're not going to put any videos out from that, because we only filmed one day, and it was very sporadic because we were hanging out with people, and we didn't film an ending, and we didn't film, like there was all this. I was like,
I didn't even ask people to subscribe. How is it a YouTube video?
I was like, oh, well, we didn't even because usually we kind of have a conversation of like what the video is going to be and things like that. We didn't talk about it, none of that. So I was like, well, we probably just won't even put out a video. But then he made the little Oklahoma vlog anyway, and so many comments are like, oh, this is my favorite vlog you've done so far. Very great, like such a nostalgic vlog, all this stuff or whatever. And it's just funny because it was not even, I kind of thought like, oh, this is going to be crap because we didn't plan anything. Right. But it's not true. Like you were saying, there's automatically a story to tell. And I think sometimes we get too caught up in like what we're supposed to do or what we're supposed to create instead of like just creating.
Right. And it comes down to people probably liked it so much because it was authentic.
Yeah.
And that's something that you mentioned earlier was like authenticity. And it's like, how much do we miss creating authentic work because we're so busy creating curated work? And it's like, then the curation, like I know for myself, like I feel like isolated when I see so much curated work. It's like I can't relate to that. Like I see people traveling to like, what is that place in Italy that I need to go to? Cinque Terre?
Oh, I don't remember, but I know what you're talking about.
Positano?
Yeah.
All those places. It's like
Positano.
like all these like places, it's like all these curated moments are not real. And it's like I can't relate to it. But the authentic moments, like the moments where you're like road tripping with your friends or you're doing something at a park with friends, like all those like authentic moments are something that people can relate to. And I just think that there's something beautiful about like stopping with the curation. And like curated content is so good, right? I'm not saying like
I don't think any of us is going to like
that extreme.
I mean, we're all artists.
We're all artists.
Like that's what we love to do.
There's something really great and beautiful about curating your work.
Totally.
Right? We're not arguing that, I don't think.
No, not at all. But there's also something to be said about just like letting moments be moments and just like creating out of like the authentic overflow of being a creator.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and it made me think about how the vast majority of people, even our age group, are not going to be, and honestly aren't even trying to be, social media influencers. They're not trying to make it into a job, but they put as much pressure on themselves like it was your job. And it's like, well, I'm not going to post, this photo because even though I really like this landscape with this beautiful bridge and flowers that, this reminds me of this moment I had, I'm not going to like post it because I know if it's not my face, then it's probably only going to get like 100 likes. But when I post my face, it gets 600. And so instead of posting this thing that made you feel something, you go over and you set yourself up with a book and a mug in some cute coffee shop and take a picture of your face because you know that you're going to get validated by 600 likes and some comments about how beautiful you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know. I just feel like there is some validity to thinking that way when it is literally your livelihood. Like whenever you've made it your job, like I think you have to think that way sometimes. But
But then it's a completely different.
Right. But most of the time, it's not your job.
Right.
It's
Right.
like it's supposed to be to connect with people.
Right.
So why do we care so much, I guess?
Yeah. Oh man, there's like so many, like my mind is going in so many directions right now. I'm like thinking of so many things because like, you know, like bringing it back to the idea of like artists and like faking it till you make it and like the validity and the affirmation. It's like, man, some of the greatest artists of all times were never affirmed in their day.
Mhm.
I think about that all the time because mostly I think it's really sad.
Right.
Right.
But
like
it's also
F.
really
Scott
beautiful.
Fitzgerald. It is. F. Scott Fitzgerald died thinking he was a failure.
Totally.
And he literally wrote the American classic. Like one of the most all-time celebrated authors. And he thinks he was a failure, right?
Right.
Same with Vincent van Gogh.
Right.
One of the best painters to ever live. Never sold, I don't think he ever sold a piece while he was alive.
Yeah.
I think he didn't sell until after he died. And that is mind-blowing and wild. And here we are thinking that like we need validation and what it's not true. Like you are an artist. And I also think this is getting into maybe a different conversation, but like social media and art are different.
Oh, so different.
You know, so like calling yourself an artist is one thing, calling yourself a social media whatever is another. Like you can be really good at social media and not a great artist, and vice versa.
Mhm.
But it doesn't like
Because most photos look good whenever they're only 500 by 500 pixels.
right. It's
The
not
500
hard.
by 500 pixels got me.
It's not hard to learn how to flat lay. You know,
Right.
It's really not, and I'm not saying that can't be an art, but there's just like something about like just because you're really good on Instagram doesn't mean you're a great artist.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes you a great Instagrammer.
Yeah,
Which
and that's great.
Is a talent.
Yeah.
But I think your thing is.
I have.
I mean, we've had a whole
Oh,
podcast.
I want to know the thing.
We have a whole podcast
Yeah.
about this, but Sarah really, really hates, I guess, degrading art to content.
Yeah, I really hate it.
And,
There's
and,
a whole
yes.
conversation.
and,
I remember this
elevating
conversation.
and
Elevating.
elevating content to art.
Yes, and I think that I do think there's a fine line. I think that content can be art and that art can be content, but I think that we're just kind of throwing everything under this umbrella and it's not true.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
Art moves you.
Yes.
Art speaks to your soul. Content fulfills a purpose of marketing.
What if it moves me to like it?
I mean, still marketing. It probably does. Did it change your soul? Maybe.
Yeah.
You hit the like button. There was definitely some soul
Yeah.
things happening.
I'm very liberal with my likes, though. So.
Yeah, you are. I just have a little bit of a thing for that, so that's a completely different conversation. I also romanticize things a little too much, and I feel anyway.
You're a 4.
Yeah, that's just how I am, you know. But I do think that like you can be an artist and do social media really well, and like it is a good tool. I just think maybe we're just too concerned with social media. Like even artists who are posting their stuff and using it as an avenue for marketing are maybe a little too concerned with it.
Yeah.
And I go back to the like musicians disappear to write their albums. They go off the grid. Like they delete everything. They don't check it. They don't even like it's not even like I don't post it. I don't get on it.
Right.
Because that influences your art.
Yeah.
And I think that we don't pay enough attention to that.
Yeah. I just got back from a 5-day escape from social media / Wi-Fi / cell service.
That sounds fantastic.
Oh, guys. It was real good for the soul. I actually got back on social media and I was like, ooh. Legitimately. Like, I was like, the only reason I'm here is because I need to be here.
Yeah.
But, like, why do we do this to ourselves?
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. There is definitely such a beautiful thing about social media, and I have so much to thank social media for. Like, I wouldn't have any of my businesses. I wouldn't have had half the opportunities I've had. So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. Like, I think we all know the benefits of social media. I think we also have to be aware of the negative things of social media. But there's just like, man, we're on it. I think we just need to limit how much we're on it, maybe.
Yeah.
And limit the power that it has in our lives of what we do and create. Because I think even just like here's another thing, right? There's too many humble brags happening on social media. And so then it makes you feel like shit when you're like, whoa, they're doing this. But half the humble brags are lies.
Yeah.
How do we, you know what I mean? Like, I literally, on my way to your guys' apartment, I was just talking to one of my girlfriends, Tara, and I was saying that, like, it is a thing within my industry for people to brag about their stats in order to get more people to tune into their podcast or to buy courses from them. And it just like totally stifles your creativity, because when you see like, oh man, my stats aren't there. Oh man, I'm not making that much money. And then it makes you question yourself as a creator. And you're like, should I be doing this thing? Like, should I like be creating and like putting content out there in the world? And it's just like, man, like if we just like limited the power and said like, okay, social media can only, like, I don't even think that this is possible. I don't know how this is happening. But like, if you like decide in your head that like social media can only have so much power in your life, I think we would be so much better off.
I totally agree.
So back to the conversation of faking it till you make it. So what you just said, there are so many people who are fluffing.
Right.
There's
a lot of fluffing.
And I mean, technically they're faking it, but is there value? Like, is there anything wrong? Like, what do we think about? I guess opening up the conversation to what do we think about that? In the fact that on the receiving side, we need to not let it have power over us. Looking at other people's what they're doing, comparing because they're in the same industry, because of XYZ, we're comparing ourselves. But for people who are trying to be teacher course sellers and whatever it is, podcasters and stuff. I guess what are your thoughts on the fluff, the faking, technically on the faking it, so that they can ultimately make it?
I have probably pretty conflicting emotions about it, because I think that it's not right. I again, that like goes to the authenticity side of me. I feel like it is maybe harder, but in the long run, I do think that like authenticity and truth and honesty and vulnerability pays off. And so I think like we have been very specific about saying like, we're not making it on YouTube. Like, we're not rich by any means. We're not even paying all of our bills. We're, whatever. And I think people appreciate that. I think that even like when you were on the Relevant podcast and you mentioned that, you're like, they said, how do you do that in New York? You said, well, I'm living off of savings, just kind of as a joke. But who was it? The girl who was on the podcast that day. She was like, oh, wow. Like in the background.
Annie F. Downs.
Yeah. They didn't really like, she didn't say much about it, but she was like, wow, thank you for like being honest, I think like people actually do appreciate that more than they even realize. I think they want it more than they realize.
Yeah.
So I think there is value in saying like, hey, look, I'm just trying to like do what I want. I'm not actually making it. But then I also look at like faking it till you make it in a little different sense than that. Like I look at it more like, kind of like what we were talking about in the beginning, where we were saying like, we've done the exploring. I know this is what I want. I know that I have like a legitimate chance at this being what there's some talent and some skills, And so then saying like, okay, I'm a designer, even though I don't have a lot of experience, I know that I have the capability.
Right.
Not so much in saying like, oh, look at me. Like I have these stats that aren't true. Like it's kind of a different scenario for me. So,
yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not about the fluff, because also the fluff can get you people in, right? Like they can bring people to you, but if you don't have the the skill, the talent, the character, it doesn't matter if they come, they're going to leave. So like the fluff only does so much for you. Like, yeah, you can fake it all day long, but you're never actually going to make it because you don't have the necessary skill sets and talent to keep them there.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. That's exactly it.
I don't know if it necessarily fits in this conversation that we're having right now, but it just reminded me of, I heard a really, I can't remember his name, but it was a really big course guy. He creates courses all the time, and that's like his thing. And he talked about how he would always, and when he started, I think maybe even now, he would pre-sell courses that he hadn't even wrote.
Oh, I just found out that's a thing.
Yeah, and so he would like, if he found, he made this course and there was somebody in the comments, said, I would love if you made a course on how to take a good Instagram photo, whatever it is. And then he would test that and start like asking people if they would be interested in a course about, how to take a good Instagram photo. And then if he had enough people say yes, he would just sell the course. And then if he hit a threshold of enough being sold, he would sell 100 courses without ever even having a course.
That's wild.
But because he sold 100 of them, now he has to actually create it. And so then he would tell him, okay, I've sold 100. Now I have a week and a half or whatever it is to create this course to get it out by the deadline that I told these people it was going to be out by.
First of all, that is a wild schedule to put, like a pressure to put on yourself.
Yes.
I literally just met a girl this week who tells me that she did that.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And she said, so I said, what happens if you don't sell that many? She goes, well, then I just return the money to the people who bought it. I was just like, mind blown.
And people aren't upset about that though? Like, I feel like
I think this girl framed it as this is a beta.
Oh, okay.
So she said that this was a beta. At least that's what she told me. It was like in quick passing by.
Yeah.
But I was just like, whoa, like people do this. For that, like, I don't know. Like, I don't mind that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't
same.
mind doing that. Like, that's actually smart business,
Right.
if we're being honest. Like, that's smart business.
Right.
It's
Testing
almost
the market to see if it's worth it.
It's almost like a minimum viable product without even having the product. Like you're selling it first. Like you're proving the market is there before you even create the the product to sell.
Because like if the market's not there, why would you want to spend hours creating this course or hours creating this thing that people don't actually care about?
Mm-hmm.
It's smart.
Yeah.
I should do that. Maybe I'll do that.
So guys, we have a new course that we're launching right now. And it is how to stay off social media. We are going to teach you all about that. You can order it right now.
And still make $1 million.
Yes.
Ooh, guys.
How to stay off social media and still make $1 million. So.
I think that could be a winner.
Well, see, the course, the thing is it cost $1 million. So we figured out that if you sell one course, you can stay off social media and make $1 million.
Wow, we're so smart.
Yes. If two of you want to buy it, we'll price it at 500,000.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Just because I think this is an interesting kind of quote thing, I'm totally leaving the joke now. There's
just so you know, the joke is now over.
It's done. I'm ending it. There's a quote. You were talking earlier about like imitating and like seeing if you can recreate a very specific, whatever. And there's a quote that it reminded me of. I don't know who it's by. I don't even remember the exact words, but it was basically saying like, it was basically saying like you have to learn all of the rules, so then that you can break all of the rules.
Yeah.
And I think that
I said that.
Oh, you said that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it to me.
By Michael
Cody
Scott.
Jensen.
Yeah, Cody Jensen.
Crossed out to Cody Jensen.
Yeah.
I think that is so key in creating anything, but then like also like faking it till you make it. Like I feel like that really is the defining, like, yes, learn all of the rules and then break all of them in creating something that is uniquely you.
Mm-hmm.
It's so powerful. I have a friend who used to print out all the lyrics of their favorite artist and all the chord charts and learned everything about this particular artist in order to like get inside of the process of like how this person created music and lyrics. And like my friend did this in order to learn the rules, in order to break them. And it's just so powerful, like to take somebody that you admire, to learn their process, not so that you can copy them. I think that that's like not the intent at all, but so that you can like learn from them, so that you can like truly learn from their experience, go through like how their mind works so that you can see, okay, if I take this knowledge that I've learned from just being educated in whatever skill set I have, plus I take what I'm learning from this person by imitating their work for a little season in life, plus I take my personality, then like creating this like unique thing in the world. I think it's so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a particular artist who kind of like some stuff that they were putting out was very like reminiscent of another artist. And so many friends I had were like, oh, they're just copying so and so, they're just copying so and so, and they were like irritated by it. And I was like, why are we mad that they're like, they obviously find inspiration and like they're learning. And I think that I just think it's weird that we don't even allow people that space to learn. We're like, no, you have to go from 0 to 100. You have to be nothing to everything. And
so was the artist like publishing music that was like...
I mean, it was like music, but their music didn't sound like it. It was just like maybe the vibe they were putting out. You know what I mean? Like they were kind of creating like their persona, and it was very reminiscent of another artist. And it's just like, it's weird to me that we're like mad about that.
Right.
You know? I'm like, obviously we don't want you to be a copycat, but that's not what this is. Like I think that there's a fine line. You can tell when somebody...
I was just going to say, there's such a fine line.
Yeah. You can tell when somebody is just, like, copying somebody and when they're, like, actually experimenting and, like, finding out who they are within a certain space. And it's weird to me that we're like, oh, you have to be, like, nobody and then exactly who you're going to be for the rest of your life.
Right.
You know? There's no in-between, and that is crazy.
Well, we're allowed to evolve, right? Like, look at John Mayer. Like, their early albums are so different from his new stuff, you know? And, like, we've seen the evolution of John Mayer throughout all of his albums. Also, John Mayer, if you ever listen to this, I'm still
just
your
waiting on
fan. Waiting on you. We just never know who your listeners are.
It's true.
We're, the 7 degrees away from Kevin Bacon. They say that that's, like, been... Not because of the internet age, it's like 2 or 3 degrees away. So
from anybody,
there's definitely somebody listening to this who knows somebody who knows John Mayer. And
I'm your girl, John.
Yeah,
we're just throwing it out there.
Lindsay's number is it's basically what you were Lindsay was talking about, and Sarah like reminded me that the copying others. It's funny how fast it goes from. This person is copying this other person, but if they just add 1 or 2 other people's influences into that, now it's original and now they are genius.
Right.
It's the people who are able, it's always the artist who have the most influences, who are the biggest geniuses of their field, because they're pulling from so many different avenues, and it may not even be all musicians. Like they're like their guitar, is they kind of pull that from John Mayer, but they're also pulling something from.
We could say their lyrics are from some beautiful poet, and,
right?
Atticus.
Like,
yeah.
but then also they did a summer internship at a carpentry firm, and they're taking these like sounds that they remember from like all of the machinery, and they're thinking about how musical that was, and then bringing that into as an influence into their music. And it's like all of those little things that they're bringing in together. It goes into the concept that everything is a remix.
Right. And
the people who remix the most, the people who basically, there's a quote that is the originality is it's a paraphrase quote by me because I cannot remember the actual quote, but it's essentially that originality is just the people who we call the most original are those who are the best at hiding their sources.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And because technically, really nobody's original.
Nothing is original.
Everything
under the sun.
is influenced by everything else. But if you take in a lot of influences and you hide your sources well, now it's like this brand new thing.
Right.
You know what's a good example? I always go to music for some reason, but
because it's so easy. It's
so
such
easy.
an easy way to
I
explain.
feel like before we had. Obviously, there were a lot of like revolutionary music situations, but then now we kind of like don't have that. We have like everything, every music genre you could think of. I feel like we have now.
Right.
But you have these artists coming in and kind of like destroying genres altogether, which is revolutionary. So you have like the 1975 who are taking influences from literally everywhere. Post Malone is a really good example of that too. Like he loves country music. And he influences all of that stuff into his like hip hop rap stuff, which is just like, how country and rap, I don't, and like
Two opposites.
But it's making such cool sounds now. And I think that's a really good example.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yes. So we're getting towards the end, so I want to bring it back to the faking it till you make it, and maybe give practical advice and or encouragement for those maybe who are more so on your two side of life, where they have passions, but they're insecure in what they're doing and don't feel like they are able to say, I'm a cupcake baker, I'm a photographer,
Right.
I'm a YouTuber. I mean, I guess I just want to continue that conversation into the people who are in their life right now.
Yeah.
What do we have to say to them?
Well, I mean, a lot, but I think one of the things is somebody told me one time, you, regardless of your titles and accolades and whatever, regardless of what you're getting paid for, you are a writer for me personally. Because it doesn't, work doesn't actually define you. Even if you're doing what you're passionate about, that doesn't define you. What defines you is what you love. And, so even if you aren't getting paid for what you love, that's who you are to your core.
Yeah.
And that has really helped me, I guess, kind of remember. And also moving to New York actually really helped me in kind of starting to believe that I am a writer, even if I'm not getting paid for it, because everybody here is doing something for money that they don't care about, right? Everybody I meet, I'm like, oh, what do you do? They're like, oh, I'm a dancer. And then through conversation, I find out that they actually work in an office building, but they dance on the weekends or whatever. But it's that's your passion.
Dance on the weekends can have a negative, a different connotation.
Broadway.
But it's your passion is who you are, whether you're getting paid for it or not. So I think just kind of being confident in what you love is really important.
Yeah. For me, one of the things that's really helped me claim my identity is just saying affirmations. I just have a huge background in affirmations. When I was little, my mom used to drive us to school, and we'd sit outside of this tree at our school, and we weren't allowed to go into school until we said our affirmations for the day. Sylvia kept us late from school until the affirmations were said and done. But I think that there is just something to say about claiming things over yourself and believing positive things over yourself before you ever are those things. And I think that we wait too long to feel something when it's we're not going to feel all the feels right away. Sometimes we have to train our heads to get there before our hearts can get there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think for me, one of the biggest things was just saying affirmations over myself and claiming that creativity, claiming the fact that I am a designer, and saying I am a designer, my work is sought after, people hear my name and they want to work with me, and saying that kind of stuff until I actually really started believing it. And now I deeply believe it, and not do I just believe it, but I'm seeing it. I'm seeing people say, you are my wish list. I cannot wait to work with you. I'm saving up my money. People are in line to work with me. But that all came from a place of affirming myself first and not waiting for the rest of the world to affirm us. Yeah. And I think that that's what it comes down to is we have to stop waiting for the rest of the world to affirm us and whatever it is we want, and begin affirming ourselves first.
I think another thing in that is what Sarah says actually a lot, is that you have to put out into the world what you want to receive.
Yeah.
And if you are sitting on the fact that you want to be a photographer, and we keep using these same examples. They apply. They're easy because they're relevant to us. But if you want to be a photographer, but you never tell anybody, or you never put it out there that that's something that you want, it's never going to happen.
Right.
And so I think there is this area of life of that you can put out there that you want to be a photographer, you want to do something, and you can take steps and move towards that, and that you don't have to say, I am a photographer. It's 100% okay to say, I want to be a photographer,
Right.
or I'm working towards being a photographer. I am working towards being a carpenter. You are on a journey.
Right.
And I think it's very much true. I don't know, maybe you have more thoughts on it, but I've heard you say that a lot of just like, you have to put the vibe
Yeah,
out.
put out good vibes, you get good vibes back.
Yeah.
I think it's true. I look at it more like a mysterious universe kind of way, but even generally speaking, people don't know if you're a good graphic designer if they never know you're a graphic designer. And I think always having like an open mind and an open heart and like a willingness to learn, I think that is the key to like getting where you want to go.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I think, like we said, like even if you don't really know photography yet, but you want to, and you want to be a photographer, just like find other photographers and say like, hey, I love your work. I would love to shadow you. Like, I just want to learn, and that is the quickest educator. First of all, like you will learn so much doing that. And you're not faking, like you're not being this person who's being inauthentic and, whatever, like you're being a true human being who is learning an art, and people will work with you. Like, I think we don't value personality and character as much as we should in that aspect. Like, or I think we don't realize how much it actually plays a part. I think like if you're a good person, people will work with you despite if you're not like the best photographer ever.
They care about personality so much.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that we don't take that into consideration. So if you just like live with an open mind and an open heart and like a willingness to learn, people will want to teach you, and then you will be the best photographer.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe this is all wrapping up, because I feel like we touched on this in the beginning too, that be okay with the process.
Yeah, the process.
Like you don't have to go from teller at a bank to professional wedding photographer in a week.
right.
You can have a process, and it's okay to share the process if you want. Like it's not shameful to be bad at something.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it's okay.
It's
like,
something to celebrate.
Yeah.
Right? Because like we're all bad at something when we first start. Like I don't know anybody who's like amazing
Right.
right out the gate.
Right.
Well, it's like the Ira Glass quote where he talks about that. Like in the beginning of anything, like your taste and your skill level are there's such a big gap. And like the whole goal is to create and create and create to close that gap and to hopefully have your skills match your taste. But really, your skills should always be behind your taste. Like it will always fall behind your taste, but it's to close the gap.
To close the gap, because in the beginning, the gap is massive.
Yeah. And it's fine. You should allow yourself to be a beginner, because that's how you become an expert.
There's no shame in it. And I think that that's the key, is like everyone starts off as a beginner. Like you don't have to, like there's no shame. Like we just want to be so good automatically because that's what we see and that's what we admire. But it's like everybody started at the start.
Yep.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it's just like this whole YouTube space that has popped up, for years now, but especially in the last like 2 to 3 years of like this vlogging scene, and how people basically within video 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they think, everybody feels like I put out 10 videos, I should be rich by now.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like that is I'm not even specifically talking about YouTube in that way, because that is a example of literally everything.
Yeah.
You never,
but it's like
we all forget, or we don't seek out the knowledge to know the years and years and years and years and years of work it took for somebody to be an overnight success.
Well, I was going to say Marquez is a good YouTuber example. He uploaded his 100th video before he had 100 subscribers.
Wow.
And now
he was like 6 million.
Now he's
million?
one of the biggest YouTubers.
He's huge.
Like, he's like at least top 20, has to be.
Yeah. He's like definitely top in the tech space.
Oh yeah.
And like he put out 100 videos before that wasn't even success, you know, like 100 subscribers isn't even like success, but he just kept doing it, you know?
We just have to be willing to put in the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Put in the work and be okay with the process. And another fake it till you make it quote is that I don't even, like, we have no idea who said any of these things.
I know.
we literally, we make up everything. We're just faking this, acting like we're smart. These are all just quotes that we made up ourselves.
Until we make it.
Yeah.
But you guys know the quote, whoever said that, don't dress for the income you have, but dress for the income that you want.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, that in itself kind of is that way of, you're putting out the things that you want to get, because if you are trying to make $1 million, but you dress like you make $100, your likelihood of making it to $1 million is
until you're at a certain success level, and then you can you're allowed to look however you want.
And again,
this is true.
And then you can wear your hoodies again.
But you'll move and think and act a different way because you gave yourself that opportunity to be in that skin. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening to Deeply Curious. We're going to end it there because I'm sure if we started talking again, we could keep talking for another hour or more or plus.
For sure.
So, this podcast, as a reminder, is sponsored by Audible. You can check out thousands of audiobooks and download a free audiobook of your choice by doing the trial by going to audible.deeplycurious.fm. Download a couple books, cancel the trial. Like I said, I don't care what you do after that. And yeah, we're again for Lindsey, where all can they find you? On the internet,
everywhere on the interwebs. Instagram, Lindsey Eryn, LindseyEryn.
Oh, the Y.
The Y. The
Gets
Y.
people, yeah.
And The Daring Romantics, or lindseyeryn.com.
Amazing.
Cool.
So if you want to check out the Daring Romantics podcast, just go to whatever podcasting app you like and love. Search for the Daring Romantics. It'll be right there. Yeah. And take a listen. It'll also be linked in the show notes. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.